Franchise legend Steven Strasburg has officially retired from baseball. I'm going to tell you why. Steven Strasburg did not just change the Washington Nationals, but he changed baseball also.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, I'm your host, Ryan Clary. You can catch me over on Twitter at RyanClary11 and as well as a show page at LO_Nationals. For all your latest Nationals news and notes, make sure to check us out over on Twitter or X, whatever the heck you want to call it nowadays. It really does not matter. Later on in the show, we're going to preview Game 2 of this Giants series as Josiah Gray takes on one of the better prospect from the Giants, or a former prospect, you could say, Kyle Harrison, left-handed pitcher, very good pitcher. This could be a tough game for the Nationals, except if you're Lane Thomas, as we found out yesterday, adding 3 hits against the lefties of San Francisco. So we'll discuss that a little bit later on. And then the second segment, we'll discuss last night's game as Trey Lipscomb, Lane Thomas both had 3 hits and a big win against the Giants. In Blake Snell's debut, he looked really rough there and thought he was not going to make it out of 3 innings. It was just a brutal outing for Blake Snell. I think that could be a glimpse into the future of the Giants with Snell, as I don't think he's all that good. We'll discuss that a little bit later on in today's show, but I wanted to take some time here because Steven Strasburg, while I didn't really talk about it yesterday, I was kind of thinking of what I wanted to say. I think Steven Strasburg, though, here's this. People say he changed the Washington Nationals. He absolutely did. Not only that, this guy changed the game of baseball. I'll explain that, but today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, Locked On MLB, that is where you'll find us over at GameTime. Save $20 off your first purchase. So, let's get into it because Steven Strasburg, again, announced his retirement over the weekend, as we all kind of knew this was going to come. Steven Strasburg could not pitch again. The Nationals understood that. And of course, Steven Strasburg also understood that, as Scott Boras, his agent, has made that well known. Everyone knew Steven Strasburg was not going to be wearing a curly W and out there in between those white lines. It was never going to happen. We all knew that. So at that point, it was like, okay, when is he going to retire? As it was first announced last year when Steven Strasburg and the Nationals kind of came together and said, I'll never pitch again. It's time to retire. Then everything kind of got a little bit hectic with the Lerner family. I believe it was back in early September is when they announced this original press conference and everything with it and all the different ceremonies that would come with it. And then it was all ripped to shreds because of a contract dispute. That all came at a terrible time for that Nationals team because, again, when you're the Lerner family, you're not all that well liked at this point. The reason why that is because this team has not been in good shape for quite some time since that 2019 team. So now you look at Steven Strasburg, one of the franchise icons, and this team, the way they handled that was awful. Now, I do think Steven Strasburg, on the other hand, this may not be a popular opinion, but I do think Steven Strasburg also could have handled it maybe a little bit better. Maybe should have showed up to spring training. That's just my opinion, though, and that's not a conversation for here right now. The conversation right now is why Steven Strasburg not only changed the Washington Nationals, but he also changed the game of baseball. You've been seeing this over the year here. Arm injuries and the way that they have been handled over the last few years, you've all seen it because this has been the hot topic, especially over the last week. You've seen Jeff Passan write about it. You've seen Bob Nightingale. All these different kind of flame-throwing pitchers are having Tommy John surgery and having elbow issues at such a higher rate at which we were just having them about 10 years ago when Steven Strasburg first came out of San Diego State. 2010, his rookie season. We all know his brilliant stretch there to start off the season, his first few starts, and then he got shut down. Tommy John surgery. You didn't see him again until until the back end of 2011. But Steven Strasburg, that was kind of like the first example of what was to come. because Steven Strasburg was the first of his kind. He was. That's what people kind of forget about. You're so used to it nowadays, seeing guys throwing 99, 98 mile per hour fastballs through the 5th and 6th inning. Steven Strasburg was doing that back in 2010, when if you were throwing 99 miles per hour as a closer, you were saying, oh my God, this guy is insane. He was doing it in the 6th inning against the Pittsburgh Pirates. Steven Strasburg was different. He was the first kind of guy who kind of transcended into what today's game is, in which you have guys getting drafted like a Policygenius, who's throwing 99 miles per hour, number 1 overall pick, going into the Pittsburgh Pirates, a difference-making pitcher. Steven Strasburg was the first of his kind. He was the plant, he was the seed that kind of turned into this big old oak tree that is now Policygenius, that is now named that former top prospect. That is your Garrett Cole coming out of high school, or coming out of UCLA rather. That is Lucas Giolito from back in the day with the Nationals. All these different guys, but Steven Strasburg was different than that. Because as Steven Strasburg, as he got hurt, he had this weird kind of almost re-identification of himself. He was a completely different pitcher, kind of as you look back in 2019, compared to what he was in 2010. Steven Strasburg was no longer that flamethrower. He recreated himself into being this finesse kind of guy. And yes, of course, he always had the changeup back in 2010. He had his curve. He had all the different things that made him a great pitcher back then, what also made him a great pitcher in 2019. But ultimately, the guy was different. He created a total new monster out of himself. He was the flamethrower coming in. And then he ended his career as the finesser. It's different. What Steven Strasburg did for baseball, you don't really see all that too often. I can think of one guy off the top of my dome who kind of did something similar to that, and that's Zack Greinke. He came in, flamethrower, Kansas City Royals. Everyone was talking about him and the hype around him. And then when he ended his career, that's not really what he is now. He's that finesse kind of guy also. Those are two guys, Steven Strasburg and Zack Greinke, who I kind of see at the same field level. I think they're right there at the same as far as pedigree goes and as far as reputation goes. Ultimately, Steven Strasburg didn't stay as healthy as Zack Greinke has always done, but still, there are not many guys like Steven Strasburg in today's game. In fact, that is why I say he revolutionized this sport and really the pitching element of this. You're not going to see that many Steven Strasburgs again in your lifetime. That is how important this guy was. And not even to mention, that was just from the baseball perspective, as a baseball fan, a Major League Baseball fan. What did he do for the Washington Nationals? Well, he was the bright light in a very dark tunnel. When you first got Steven Strasburg, number one, outside of opening day in 2008 at Nationals Park when Ryan Zimmerman hits that walk-off home run against the Atlanta Braves, that was the best moment up until then. After that game, you didn't really see all too many sellouts. You didn't see not too many wins either. But as soon as Steven Strasburg got there in 2010 to make his debut, you cannot tell me up at that point in time, there was not a more electric game up to that point, up until Game 4 of the 2012 NLDS. But even then, and that is obviously when Jason Worth hit that walk-off home run, up until 2019, that debut that Steven Strasburg, striking out 14 batters over 7 innings pitched, a franchise record in his first game as a National. That was when the tide started to turn. That is when you started to buy in. That is when you get Bryce Harper. You draft him and you start to see the future of another difference-making prospect who's going to go number 1 overall, in which he did. The Nationals, Steven Strasburg, they're neck and neck. That is an important guy to this organization. Getting him right and getting really just kind of all the beef aside that has kind of been happening over the last year or so, getting all of that away, wiping that slate clean. Hopefully it still is. Hopefully Steven Strasburg doesn't have ill will, but still, I guarantee you this, he's probably got a little bit just from the way that it has been handled. I've hated the way it was handled from day one from the Lerner family. I've hated the way that even Steven Strasburg has handled this, kind of staying quiet. But ultimately, it's not really his fault. I won't blame him. It's really the Lerner's fault, if we're just being honest here. But even beyond that point, Strasburg was a difference maker, man. This guy and what he did for this organization will probably never get the recognition that it probably should. This guy was different. You're not going to see another Steven Strasburg. You're not going to see it. And you know what? Thinking out loud here, because at this point, we don't really know what the plans are for him in his retirement. We don't really know what's going to be coming next. But I can tell you this, the Astros coming to town in about a week and a half, starting on Friday, next Friday. That's the 2019 World Series reunion time. That would be a hell of a time over on Saturday to retire Steven Strasburg's jersey against the Houston Astros at home, giving away your World Series replica rings that Saturday. It would make a whole lot of sense to do that when you also have some franchise legends coming back into town, whoever that may be, whoever may be coming. That would be the time to do it. And I think if the Nationals were smart, that's probably when they'd have his retirement press conference and then honor him on the field. And hopefully, maybe down the road sometime this season, you put number 37 up in the rafters. And just like Ryan Zimmerman, no one will ever wear that number again, because that is what Steven Strasburg meant to the Washington Nationals. But not only the Nationals, also baseball in general. You won't see that many Steven Strasburgs again. And of course, a legendary career for a legendary National. That is the guy that you're going to be seeing up in the rafters, and no one will ever wear number 37 again here as a Washington National. Thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. Next, let's talk about last night's game, because it was a pretty good game for the Nationals. A lot of good things happened. Lane Thomas, 3 hits. You had Trey Lipscomb, 3 hits, and also 3 stolen bases. Oh my God, what can't this guy do at this point? We'll discuss that after I tell you guys about our good friends over at GameTime. And guys, you ever walking up to Nationals Park or maybe even Capital One Arena and say, I don't have tickets, I don't know where to go? Let me tell you why GameTime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. And prices on the GameTime app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guaranteed. GameTime takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. And of course, while you're at it, you can pick any specific game or matchup. And when you do that, go up to the front gate, as I do. This is what I do all the time, guys. I go to the Metro, taking the Metro into DC. As I get off on Half Street there, I open up GameTime right before first pitch, and that is when I get their flash zone deals. And that is what I want you to do, because those zone deals are great. And also, not even to mention, you can have the views from your seat just right in your hand, and you're just a few clicks away. That is why we love our friends over at GameTime. So guys, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the GameTime app with code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the GameTime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Now let's get into it to talk about the Nationals' big win last night in San Francisco. The Nats, they knocked off those little pesky Giants. They are a pretty solid, kind of fun team to watch, but you had Blake Snell on the mound. Their big acquisition from this offseason. Well, he didn't do all too great. Blake Snell against this Nationals team, 3 innings pitched, 3 hits, 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, 72 pitches, and only 39 strikes. Blake Snell is coming off, not only did he not pitch at all this spring training, but when it's your first time out and you're against kind of these scrappy little Nats with not the best lineup in there, by the way, because the lineup last night, while it wasn't all too great, they had some bright moments. You had Jesse Winker with a nice little base knock. He had two runs as well. You had Luis Garcia with another nice little hit there at an RBI. And of course, I had a strikeout there, but Luis Garcia has been great to start off this season. But the highlights were Lane Thomas and Trey Lipscomb. You all knew this because Lane Thomas, as we saw last year, when he goes against left-handed pitching, there's not many guys who can get Lane Thomas out. That's just the fact of it. 3 hits, 3 RBIs, a home run. This was one of Lane Thomas's kind of breakout games to hopefully kind of take some momentum back into this thing. Because if you remember last season, I remember talking about this so well because I was like, guys, Lane Thomas, he's a great player, but he's going to start off slow. He always does this. Well, last year he started off red hot. I was wrong, but he didn't really follow the trend. And this year he kind of has gotten off to a little bit of a slow start, but now he has a 230 average with a 619 OPS. He's starting to get back in the swing of things, but adding those 3 hits, adding a few RBIs as well, and the home run was big. Lane Thomas might be all the way back. And now you go up against a Kyle Harrison tonight, a young left-handed starting pitcher. He's probably going to have another big day. But in my opinion, the story of yesterday's game was Trey Lipscomb. Trey, welcome to the big leagues. 3 hits, 3 stolen bases, an RBI. Just a well-rounded, great game for this young guy. Trey Lipscomb, he just looks like he belongs. It's one of those things. Don't look at the numbers. His numbers are good. Batting .265, 639 OPS. Beyond all that, though, this guy just looks like he belongs. You look at him out there. Number one, his defense is incredible. We've seen that on display. You saw it on display the second game of the season, his first game of the season, even the third game against the Cincinnati Reds. This guy is just good. Flat out good. I don't know what to say about it. You may be thinking like, oh, good analysis, but that's all I can say. If you were watching Late Night Nats last night up until 12:30 or whatever time it ended, you would probably say the same thing. There's something about him. When you watch him, he just gets it. Having that opportunity to steal 3 bags the way that he did, and also taking third base on one of those when the ball went out in the center field, he's smart. He has the IQ. You understand as to why the Nationals kept him up in big league camp for so long. Because really, if you look at it, you might be saying, well, shouldn't this guy deserve an opportunity probably before Trey Lipscomb? Shouldn't James Wood be one of those guys kind of get an opportunity, especially at the way that he hit? Well, I think there are some things under the hood that we just simply do not understand with Trey Lipscomb. I think that's part of like his baseball IQ. He sat all 3 years at the University of Tennessee before finally getting his opportunity to start, and that is when he took advantage of it and became a 3rd-round pick by the Washington Nationals. This guy has learned. He is eager. He is hungry to play, and you see it. And also, just beyond all the different things, his baseball IQ is so high. You can see it. You can just feel it. All these different things, Trey Lipscomb passes the eye test 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You see it with him. You can trust him over at third. It's not, no offense, with Jake Alou last year. At times, you'd see him and you'd be like he's good. He's a scrappy little player. He can put the ball in play. But ultimately, his ceiling is so low. And Trey Lipscomb, what he does defensively over there, what he adds, those defensive values over at third or over at second, really wherever you put the guy, you're probably going to have faith in him. He won a Gold Glove last year for a reason. It's not because he's a bad fielder. And that means a lot for this team. Again, we've talked about this. The Nationals weren't all that much better last year on paper as far as talent goes. Yeah, C.J. Abrams took a nice step up, but also guys like Joey Meneses took steps back. Other guys, Lane Thomas, took a step forward. Other guys like Keibert Ruiz kind of stayed the same. Had a little bit of a better season, but wasn't all too great. All these different things are kind of boding well for this Nationals team, taking steps up. But when you have guys like Trey Lipscomb, again, we've talked about it. You look at the Atlanta Braves, we talk about them a lot, and it's annoying. I understand that. But they have prospects kind of who come up out of nowhere, who develop. They develop well, man. The Trey Lipscomb, he could be that success story for this Nationals team. And again, you might be asking, why are we talking about Trey Lipscomb so much? That's what you want to see. This is what you want to see. And of course, maybe some things you don't want to see. It's probably Keibert Ruiz going 0 for again, not looking all too great over the last week. Batting 194, the 555 OPS now in the 2024 campaign. But everything's starting to click for Lipscomb. When you see that, you got to be encouraged at least the slightest bit. Because again, this Nationals team, it's going to be a long 162-game season. I can tell you that right now. But also, at the end of the day, you're going to have to love this process because the Nationals, they're not going to get all that much better this year. You're going to see prospects and individual performances probably be a little bit better, but still, it's not all going to be that pretty. Well, we'll discuss that. But also, the Nats, they can go for a series win tonight in San Francisco over at the beautiful Oracle Park. We'll discuss that game as it is a Josiah Gray day. Got roughed around his first 2 starts of this season. Listen, do we just relax? If he gets rocked around against the Giants at a pretty pitcher-friendly ballpark, do we start sounding the alarms yet? We'll discuss that after I tell you guys about our good friends over at PrizePicks. And guys, when we talk about PrizePicks, you need to know that spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. Take your pick or more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. Get on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. PrizePicks has something for every sports fan, from baseball and basketball to League of Legends and everything in between. You can pick LeBron, Shohei Ohtani, Connor McDavid, and Jude Bellingham all in the same entry. It's so much fun. And of course, like maybe last night, if you had the national championship game, or even tonight with the Wizards playing, guess what? You bet against the Wizards. That simple. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Guys, that is code LOCKEDONMLB. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. It is a Josiah Gray day after giving up 6 earned runs and 7 earned runs in his first 2 starts of the season. It has not been pretty, but fortunately for Josiah Gray, you're going up against a left-handed pitcher with the Nationals, Kyle Harrison. It's going to be a tough game. It could be. Looking at Joey Gallo, I don't really know what he's going to do. With CJ Abrams up, who's day-to-day at this point, who knows when he will return. I feel like the Nationals going up against Kyle Harrison should probably kind of play this smart and kind of play the matchup game. Yeah, you might have to watch Ildemaro Vargas over at short one last time. At the end of the day, though, Ildemaro Vargas has been off to a pretty decent start. I'm not saying Ildemaro Vargas is good, but you can kind of rely on him for just one more game. I think CJ Abrams should probably sit out tonight. I don't really know what the plan will be for him. It's day-to-day with his finger injury, his left pinky. But still, you don't want to risk anything. You don't want to put CJ Abrams out there just because he's at 95%. Let's say he gets jammed, kind of re-injures that pinky, and then all of a sudden, a minor problem might become a major one. You don't want to see that. We've seen that over the years with the Nationals and kind of mishandling some injuries. Not to say this regime has, but you have seen it in the past, and in baseball, it happens. This is a 162-game marathon. You don't want to risk anything with your future star shortstop. In fact, not future. He is the star shortstop at this point in time. But looking at this matchup with Kyle Harrison, obviously, you look at Joey Gallo against left-handed pitching. While weirdly last year he did actually have higher slugging numbers against left-handed pitching, that hasn't really been the case for his entire career. And even then, the numbers really don't indicate a huge difference in that aspect. But you would probably have to think that the Nationals are going to do something. I look at guys like Joey Meneses. I want to see Joey Meneses get going. It has been a tough stretch for him over the last week or so after kind of starting off pretty hot, going 0 for 4 last night with the strikeout. I want to see Joey Meneses going up against left-handed pitching. This is where you should eat. When you have Joey Gallo in front of you, when you have Lane Thomas, Jesse Winker, who's been getting on base at a decent clip, you need to hit those guys in. You need to. That is your job, Joey. That is why he is here. So taking advantage of a younger pitcher like a Kyle Harrison, this would be a good thing. Now, on the flip side of this, Josiah Gray also can't do what he's been doing over the last 2 starts. You can't give up 6 earned runs. You can't give up 7 earned runs. You can't only go 4 innings. You got to give this bullpen some time to kind of cook a little bit. It's not going to be an overnight thing because luckily last night, Trevor Williams, again, by the way, looked really good, which I might be eating my phone at the end of the season if he finishes the 4 ERA. But I think Trevor Williams held his own last night. Now it's time for Josiah Gray because, again, the Nationals, they need Josiah Gray to pan out if they want any sort of success this season. You've already seen the steps up from Mackenzie Gore. He's kind of honing in the zone a little bit. Josiah Gray's been a little flimsy to start out this season. So we'll see what the Nationals can do, but you got to get a win here, win the series, and who knows what will happen after that. Thank you all for making Locked On Nats your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcast. And of course, check us out over on YouTube. Just search Locked On Nationals. Hit that subscriber button for me as well. We say goodbye to a franchise legend with Steven Strasburg. retirement ceremony will probably be coming soon. We'll see when those announcements are made, when the Strasburg family is running in town. Maybe they won't do it for the 2019 World Series reunion, but in my opinion, that's probably the best time to do it. So I think everyone would be happy because Steven Strasburg, you ain't winning that World Series without the guy with the World Series MVP coming out there, retiring his jersey against those just hated Houston Astros teams. That would be a lot of fun to see someday. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Stay tuned for the Nationals tonight, 9:45 Eastern time. You won't want to miss it. I'll catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one.